I don't know about you, but I can't stand it when I hear budget advice that's like, you should save more or spend less than you make. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock, as if we didn't already think of that. So if you've been trying to follow someone else's financial blueprint and wonder why it never sticks, then this is for you, because today I'm going to show you a different way. And by the end of this video, you're going to learn what a value-based spending plan is, why it works, how to identify your real value so that your money starts flowing toward what actually matters to you, and the energetic piece that most financial advice completely ignores, because how you feel about your money is just as important as what you do with it. Welcome to video 5 of the Broke versus Abundant Energy series. This is the first, but definitely not the last video of this series, where we're going to be getting into practical money strategy, not just the identity and energy work. And if you're new here, I'm Angie Hawkins, the Inner Glow Coach, and I help successful on paper women who are checking off all of the boxes of what they quote unquote should be doing, but still feel like something's missing. And I help them expand their inner and outer wealth so that their life feels as good as it looks. And stay until the end, because all of my videos have at least one action step at the end that you can implement in your everyday life. Because this isn't just about information. It's about taking bold action, because that's how you actually make changes in your life. And I'm going to give you a simple shift that you can use today that will instantly show you a way to budget that doesn't feel restrictive. Because the problem with most budgeting advice is that it sounds like delete DoorDash, stop going to Starbucks, and put at least 20% into your savings. Or even the FIRE savings method, I think, advises to put 50% into savings, as if gas doesn't cost $5 a gallon and the cost of living isn't ridiculous. And maybe you've tried these things. And by these things, I mean cutting out expenses. And maybe it worked for a few weeks or before life happened, and then you fell completely off, and then you felt guilty about it for the next 3 months. And this isn't necessarily a discipline problem, although it could be, but the overall problem is that traditional budgets are built around restriction. They focused on telling you what you cannot spend, and they treat every dollar the same regardless of what it means to you. So it completely ignores the fact that we're all human beings with different values, different emotions, and dynamic lives that don't necessarily fit neatly into cells in an Excel spreadsheet. So broke energy around budgeting sounds like I have to cut everything. I have to be responsible with money. And you do have to be responsible with money, but maybe that's not a good example. Or I feel guilty every time I spend on myself. I guess by responsible, I mean, whose definition of responsible are you following? Society's or yours? And the last thing I want to say about a broke mindset with budgeting is it's usually very black and white. Like, I either follow the budget perfectly or I blow it off completely and start over again next month. No, we aren't telling ourselves these things anymore, because abundant women understand that a budget is not punishment. And even though your budget is fixed based on your income, there is a choice component, and I don't think traditional budgeting gives us enough personal choice and agency, and it takes away our personal power, and that's why it can feel restrictive. Because when your spending plan is built around your actual values, meaning the things that light you up and fill your cup and spark your inner glow and align with the life that you're building, it feels intentional, it feels like yours, and it gives you the motivation to actually stick with it. And this reminds me, I'm not really involved with the fitness community anymore. I used to only follow fitness people on Instagram and read all of the fitness magazines. But I remember when people would start a new fitness or weight loss routine, they would say things like, well, I have to run, but I hate running. Then don't run, because running isn't the only way to lose weight, and it's definitely not the only way to improve your cardiovascular health. And the reason why you shouldn't run if you hate running, because if you hate running, you're not going to stick with it. You might stick with it for a week or two, but then you're totally going to give up on your plan instead of simply choosing a substitute exercise. And so when it comes to money, the thing is, you're always going to spend money. And by the way, I actually don't like using the words earning or spending when talking about money. And we're going to talk about that in a later video. And I know those are the most commonly used words, so I do use them sometimes in videos. But I like to use the words receive and circulate, because money is energy. And when you start talking about it as energy and building a relationship with it, which we're going to talk about later in this video, you start to look at money in a whole new way, which is all about being in your abundant energy. But anyway, I was talking about spending and circulating money. You're always going to circulate money. The question is, are you circulating it consciously or unconsciously? Or in other words, are you circulating it from abundance or scarcity? And what this means is abundant energy, it reflects who you are and who you're becoming, and broke energy keeps you comfortable with who you have been. And although that may feel safe, it's actually holding you back from abundance. So a values-based budget does not ask you to circulate less, although you may have to if you've been circulating more than you've been receiving. Because again, this isn't defying the rules of math. Math still applies in any budget. But a value-based spending plan guides you to circulate money with more intention. So we're just gonna cut to the chase in this video and get to the action step, because that is where the magic happens. But before I get into it, I just want to give you the backstory of this is how I budget for myself, and this is how I advise my clients to budget. So that's how I know that it already works. And just to give you even more of the backstory of my personal experience with this, I have a finance degree. And when I was in college earning my finance degree, I worked full-time, and I actually had 2 part-time jobs that equaled full-time. So on the weekends, I waited tables, and during the week, I worked at a bank. And I started out as a teller, and then I moved to a role in the fraud department, which was actually kind of cool. But my point is, through my experience in my college education, which was financial, and my bank job at looking at other people's accounts, I became really good at managing my own money. And I'm going to age myself, but this was at a time way before any fancy consumer software, or even before online banking was even real time, because now I can look at my checking account and it's almost exactly what my balance is in real time. And this is not how it was back then, mostly because of the checks still clearing, because yes, we were writing checks. This was the early 2000s. So it kind of feels as archaic as an abacus or something like that. But at the time it didn't feel archaic, because we did have Excel. So I used Excel to manage my money, which was effective, but it's very manually intensive. But because that was my profession, I didn't mind, and it worked for many years, but I did get burned out on it because it felt so restrictive. It felt like I never had money to go on vacation or treat myself to something special. So this is how I came up with a values-based spending plan. And I almost said invented. It is an original idea, but I'm guarantee I am not the only one who talks about this or budgets like this. And the best part about a values-based spending plan, or as I should start to say, circulating plan, is that I don't have to meticulously track every penny anymore, because yes, that can be tiring. Also, we're going to get into it, but in today's age, in the year of the Lord 2026, there are software programs and apps that can help you with that. So that brings us to action step number 1, which is the framework for building a values-based budget. Step number 1, identify your core values. So before you even look at your accounts or even do any math or touch a number, Get clear on what actually matters to you. Not the essentials, because we will talk about those later. So anything like food, shelter, car, gas, we're not talking about that in this step. We're talking about, and we're also not talking about what you think should matter, not what your parents valued, or not what society tells you to prioritize. What genuinely lights you up and makes your life feel rich? Because again, abundance isn't just about money, it's about how you show up in life and how your life actually feels. So, for example, your values might be freedom, adventure, health, creativity, connection, growth, beauty. Write down at least 5, and these become the filter for any discretionary spending decision you make. Or if you're not sure of your values, ask yourself, when I do spend money, when I circulate money and feel genuinely good about it, meaning not guilty, not a situation where I feel like I have to justify spending it, but in the situations where I actually feel good spending money, what was it on? Because your body and how you feel always gives you clues. Or another way to do this is to think about specific things that are important to you. Because if you haven't already noticed from life experience, everybody has their own thing that they allocate more money to. So, for example, I've gone through different phases of things that I spend money on. At one point, it was shoes. That was in my 20s. At another point, this was like late 20s to early 30s, it was fingernail polish. I have over 100 bottles of fingernail polish. When I lived in Chicago, anytime OPI would drop a new collection, I would buy at least half of the colors, sometimes all of them. And that was back when I wasn't even making 6 figures yet. And a friend at the time who I worked with, and we made about the same amount of money, was always like, how can you afford to buy all that fingernail polish? But she bought designer handbags, and I would think the same thing about her. The difference was we both allocated our money to things that lit us up. Or, for example, now I surf, so I spend a lot of money on bathing suits to wear surfing. But I also know people who go out to eat every day. And I don't go out to eat every day because it's not a priority. And notice how I didn't say that I can't afford it. It is not a priority because bathing suits are more important than restaurant meals to me. So the first step is to get clear on what you value, even if it's just one thing. Step number 2, audit your current spending. Pull up the last 30 days of transactions, and before you click off this video, please listen to me. Because yes, I'm going to ask you to do a few things that are going to take some time and energy. And I know this part isn't sexy or glamorous, but sometimes you have to do the things you don't like to get to where you want to go. And using another example of health and fitness, this is actually a perfect example. I used to have 6-pack abs, and I got there by weighing all of my food meticulously and tracking every single little thing that went in my mouth, including gum, into an Excel spreadsheet. So there was a lot of precision. There was a lot of obsessiveness. It was borderline maniacal. Was it fun? No. Was it effective? Hell to the MFing yes. And you can ask anyone who has had 6-pack abs or currently has 6-pack abs, and I guarantee they will tell you this is what they do. The only exception to this is people who are genetic freaks. And I say that lovingly because I'm actually jealous because they don't have to meticulously track their food like this to get 6-pack abs. So if you are not a genetic freak, you absolutely have to be borderline maniacal to get there. So if you want to be abundant, you have to go through this initial phase of, and honestly, if you do this right, you only have to do it for a month. So it's not always fun and it's not long term, but I used to not only meticulously track my food, but also my budget because like I said before, I did initially obsessively track my budget on an Excel spreadsheet. But now both things, because I went through that process, they're both very intuitive. So this isn't forever. And again, this is the year 2026. So going forward, for support on your budget help, there are tools for this. There's Quicken, there's YNAB, there's Mint. So if you still stuck with me after mentioning tracking all your expenses, then this is the rest of the step. And I do actually recommend using a tool for this, or you can usually download your bank statement to an Excel format or a format that converts to Excel. I use Quicken, which is very user-friendly and affordable, but it also may not go into the detail you need. But this is the step. Pull up your last 30 days of transactions and sort them into 2 categories. Aligned, meaning required. So this is your food, shelter, stuff that you actually need. And this also includes things that are aligned to your values and make you feel good. And then unaligned, meaning it was an impulse purchase, it was guilt-driven, it was scarcity-based, it's not an essential, and it didn't necessarily make you feel good. So sort them into 2 categories. And the reason why this is manual initially is because you're gonna have transactions like Amazon, Target, and it's like, you could buy anything at Amazon. So you really have to dig into what those transactions are. So that's why I'm saying you only really have to do this once. And then you can let the whatever software program you choose to take over. And again, I do recommend Quicken. I feel like I'm biased, but it's so inexpensive because I feel like a lot of other products, they're really expensive. And also YNAB, I feel like borderline can get you obsessive. Actually, I don't want to state a personal opinion. I might edit that part out. I'm just going to shut up. But this is the energetic piece that gets really interesting. You will probably find that a huge chunk of what you're currently spending falls into the unaligned category. And that doesn't mean that you're irresponsible. And this isn't to cause you shame or to beat yourself up. This is to become aware of when you're impulse shopping and trust me, I've done this. So if this is you, I'm not shaming you, but to numb your emotions, or and actually DoorDash is a good example of this, but spending out of convenience instead of spending out of consciousness. Or also, this is another common example, comparison purchases. So you're keeping up with a lifestyle that isn't really yours, because broke energy spends to escape, avoid, prove something, but abundant energy spends to expand, invest, and express. And an example of this is when I worked in corporate America, I spent an uncomfortable amount each month on bullshit purchases. And I'm talking at least $500 a month. And this is like Instagram ads, impulse buys. When I say bullshit, I mean stuff I didn't need at all. And when I quit corporate America and started my own business, initially I had to completely cut all of that out because I wasn't making any money and I was living off my savings. And I initially freaked out about it. But what I realized is that once I quit corporate America, I didn't need all of those impulse purchases anymore because I had been spending that money to self-soothe because I was so miserable working in corporate America. So I bring this up to, again, create the awareness when you're going through this exercise to see where you're doing this yourself. So I know I'm getting lengthy, but let's get back to the steps. So step 1 is understand your values, identify your values. 2, identify all your transactions for the past 30 days and put them into aligned and unaligned. 3, set your non-negotiables. So your non-negotiables are the things that get funded no matter what. So this includes your essentials, and this also includes savings and investments, because I truly believe in paying yourself first. And that's not to say, like, for instance, I've had times in my life where I didn't have as much disposable income because either a life event or the income I was making, because again, that is fixed. So I went through periods where I may have only been saving $50 a month in a regular savings account. And sometimes you go through those phases and that's okay, but you always pay yourself first, even before your values-based spending. So the first thing I want you to do is identify your non-negotiables. That is your food, shelter, anything survival, and your savings and investments. Then step 4, build your value-based categories. So now we're building our budget from scratch using values as the foundation. So instead of generic categories like entertainment or miscellaneous, you're creating categories that actually mean something to you. So for example, if freedom is a core value, you may have a travel and experiences fund. If health is a value for you, then you would have your gym membership or any of those type of things. Or if growth is a value for you, then coaching or courses or books have their own intentional line item. And this is where I also recommend that you build in what I call a glow fund. So this is a category that's specifically for circulating on things that make you feel radiant and expressed and like yourself. And this is not frivolous. This is essential, because a woman who never spends on herself is a woman who is running on empty. And I know this from my own personal experience and from my clients' experience, because you cannot build abundance from empty. So in my opinion, that category should come before your values-based category, and that should actually even be a value, but that's just my opinion. Part of building your value-based categories will mean that you have to make some conscious cuts. And these are the things that you're choosing to spend less on, not because you have to or because you quote unquote can't afford it, but because they're not a priority, because they do not align with your values and who are you becoming. And with your budget, you are unavailable for circulating on things that are not a priority. And when you start thinking like that, it doesn't make it feel as restrictive. And that is the energetic shift here, because you're not cutting your lattes or whatever because Dave Ramsey or whoever the hell told you not to. You are consciously choosing where your energy, which is what money is, by the way, flows and circulates. And that is abundant energy, and that is your own personal power that, again, Dave Ramsey or who the hell ever cannot take away from you. And then the last step of this is do a monthly money date. So this is once a month, sitting down with your money circulating plan and review your actual circulating and have an honest conversation with yourself. And again, this isn't to guilt yourself. This is a genuine check-in, because abundant energy is not black and white. Abundant energy has a growth mindset. So if it didn't go the way that you wanted it to go, then you have the opportunity to change it going forward. So you can ask yourself, where did I spend in alignment this month? And celebrate that, because that's also an important part of this. But you also have to analyze, where did I drift into scarcity or unconscious spending? And again, the whole point of all of this is to have a growth mindset and ask yourself, what do I want to do differently next month? And the primary purpose of this is not just to budget your money, which that is the primary purpose, but also this is to get you in the habit of treating money like a relationship, because it is. Because I would hope that your relationships, that your most valued relationships, are not simply transactional. Your relationships require attention, honesty, and a growth plan going forward. So this monthly review gets you in that energy of treating money like a relationship and not just a simple transaction, which is another reason why I like to use the words receive and circulate, because that makes it feel more relational, whereas spending and earning feel transactional. So, and I'm going to pause right here to review all of the steps on screen, because I know I was very wordy in between the steps. But overall, the shift from broke to abundant energy around budgeting is this. You stop seeing your circulating plan as a self-imposed prison and start seeing it as a reflection of your values and your vision. Because broke energy is restrictive, but abundant energy redirects to your priorities and what is important to you. And when you are building a circulation plan that actually reflects who you are and where you're going, you stop fighting it because it actually feels like it's meant for your life, because it is. So that is action step number 1, which I know is a lot and is going to take time to implement, and that's okay. Give yourself grace. So that is why I'm also giving you action step number 2, which is something you can start practicing immediately, and I recommend practicing it immediately and every day. From here on out, anytime you're circulating money or thinking about circulating money, even just $1, you are going to ask yourself, is this a priority? Based on the analysis on your values that you just did. And it's just awareness to start, because awareness is always the first step to change. And once you can see where your money is actually going versus where you want it to go, that makes your values-based circulation plan so much easier to implement. Because again, if it feels restrictive or you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick to it. So if you're ready to go deeper and complete an even more comprehensive values-based spending plan as part of a full money mastery and identity upgrade, that's exactly what we do inside the Inner Glow Overflow. And that is my new private one-on-one money mastery experience for successful on paper women who are ready to receive, circulate, and grow real wealth from the inside out so that their life feels as good as it looks. So we are combining practical money and saving strategy, which goes way deeper into what we just talked about today, identity work to effortlessly step into your next level, nervous system work to feel safe holding more, because sometimes it doesn't feel safe, even though we want more money, sometimes it doesn't feel safe holding more. You will develop fierce self-trust and abundance overflow, not only in your bank account, but in your confidence and the energy that you bring into every room. And the best part is, this is all about bold action and real life implementation. Because again, information is everywhere. You do not need more information. You need to stop consuming information and finally become the woman who actually lives in abundance. And spots will be extremely limited. So if you're interested, I will put the link in the description. And I have 2 clients right now who they're enrolled in my Abundance Mindset program, which doesn't include the practical money piece. And they both manifested back at their coaching fees. One doubled her salary at her job, and another just received a promotion and a 10% raise, all within the first few months. So I already know from my personal experience and with them that this works. So back to values-based spending. The next time you hear, you should save more and spend less than you make, you can be like, babe or Dave or whoever, I'm not an idiot, because that is definitely not the issue. You can sleep soundly knowing that you're receiving and circulating money with your value-based spending plan, because you are an abundant badass. And in the next video, we're going to talk about inherited money stories, because you guys, that one goes deep, and honestly, it's one of the most important videos of this series so far. So watch video 6, and I will see you in the next video.